Good day, and welcome to FYI. I'm your host, John Bailey, and today we're going to talk about the holiday season. And it just so happens that November and December are two of my favorite months. November, because that's my birthday, and who doesn't like to celebrate their birthday? And also, it's Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, just a wonderful family holiday. December is obviously Christmas. And for a lot of Christians and a lot of people, they celebrate Christmas because it is the birth of the Christ child. With me today is Father Dave Heney, and we're going to talk about Bethlehem then and now. Good to have you here.
Great to be here, John.
I love it when you're here because it's so educational and knowledge.
Great.
And you've got so much knowledge about so many different subjects. But basically, when we're talking about Bethlehem, you have a Holy Land tour every year.
Every year. This year will be our 11th year, going in June.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and we go to Bethlehem every year.
And you take about 44, 45 people?
Between 40 and 50 people.
And this happens like in June, right?
It's always the last 2 weeks in June. We chose that time because it allows more school families to go.
Makes sense.
We get sometimes parents and a couple of kids to go as school is out for some schools, and so it's just easier for them to go.
Now, what is Bethlehem like today?
Today? Well, I mean, it's a fairly large town by Middle East standards. It's about maybe 25,000, 30,000 people. It's just located about maybe 5 miles due south of Jerusalem. Between Jerusalem and Bethlehem, there's a short area of fields and desert, and then you come into the suburbs of Bethlehem. It's a very hilly area. If you ever have postcards that show the hills of Bethlehem, it's actually true, and the hills are kind of steep, so the roads sometimes snake around up to the top. It's a fairly normal Middle East town. I would say it's about 60% Muslim and about 40% Christian.
Now, Bethlehem today,
Yeah.
What else happens in Bethlehem besides being a very big and important tourist attraction?
Well, it is the major Christian tourist attraction. Any Christian going to the Holy Land is definitely going to go to Bethlehem. But Bethlehem also is the location of Bethlehem University, which is a premier Catholic institution in all of the Middle East. It's operated by the Christian Brothers, long tradition of excellence in Catholic education. It's located right at the top of the hill in Bethlehem, so it has kind of a commanding view of everything. And it really is, I've been there many times. It's a stunningly beautiful and excellent Catholic university right in the heart of Bethlehem.
So it's really a cosmopolitan city.
Well, I mean, as cities go in that region of the world, like I say, it's predominantly Muslim now. It used to be predominantly Christian, but one of the problems in the Middle East right now is Christians are moving out. So Bethlehem Christians are probably 40% and dropping. However, right next door to Bethlehem is a suburb called Bet Sahor. There's about 16,000 people there, and they're almost 90% to 95% Catholic. And that's because they have decided that if any Christian family feels economically an economic hardship in which they might be encouraged to sell and move out, they band together and they help out that family so that they can stay in the Middle East. So the people of Bet Sahor have done a spectacular job of retaining the Christian population right next door. Not too many people know about that village. It's actually in the area what's called Shepherd's Field, where traditionally people believe is where the angels appeared to the shepherds, just outside of Bethlehem. So Bethlehem is about 40% Christian, maybe less. Bet Sahor, 95% Christian.
Why were some of the Christians leaving Bethlehem?
Well, the economic downturn that we had a few years ago, it was hard in the U.S. and especially hard in places around the world. Often you have Muslim families coming in to a Christian family, maybe with 4 or 5 kids trying to go to school, and they will offer that Christian family maybe 3 times the price of their house in cash. Well, that's a pretty compelling offer, and so a number of Christian families will take that money and migrate to Europe or San Diego or Detroit or places in the U.S. And that's why the people of Beth Sahur kind of banded together to
Have their own community.
To look out financially for one another, and they've done a really good job.
Now, Bethlehem,
Yeah.
time of the birth of Christ.
Well, much smaller.
Yeah.
Still very hilly. The hills don't change, but very small. And the whole region of the Middle East is in ancient days was a highly volcanic area. So the rock is very easy to carve. So it's a place of many, many caves. And, a cave is kind of a convenient, natural place to live. So what people would do is they would move into the cave, and then they would build a house attached to the front of it. So you would see a house up against a hillside, and then the back part of the house would be a cave. One of the caves in Bethlehem has traditionally been seen to be the place where Jesus was born. And there's a fairly good archaeological verification of it, because in the ancient world, when the Romans wanted to demonstrate their power over you, over rivals, and they considered the Christians rivals,
Sure.
they would find out what is their most sacred place, and then they would build a Roman temple on top of it. And the Romans would, be very careful to do due diligence, to investigate, to make sure they didn't make a mistake, that they actually were building their temple on an authentic Christian site. So they would find out where it was, they'd build their temple on top, thinking that would destroy the Christian faith. Obviously, it didn't work. Christians are still here and the Romans are gone. But the archaeological verification of that temple, ironically, verifies the site of Jesus' birth.
Why did Mary and Joseph journey to Bethlehem?
Well, they were living in the north in the town of Nazareth. It's about a week's journey away from Bethlehem. And according to the Gospel of Luke, the Roman emperor wanted to take a census of the citizens. Of course, that's always bad news when you hear that,
Because of taxes?
It's all about taxes. The Romans are all about conquering and money. So they would journey for about a week, generally in a large caravan of people, maybe 50, 60 people. And they would travel to Bethlehem. Bethlehem was the traditional site of where King David was born. And Mary and Joseph are known to be of the lineage of King David. So they would travel to Bethlehem. Bethlehem was probably filled with many, many relatives, because they're all of the same family line. And so they would take that trip to go to Bethlehem to be counted in the census.
Now, when they got to Bethlehem,
Right.
They didn't have Holiday Inns, they didn't have Marriotts, they didn't have places to go.
Actually,
How did
Yeah.
that work?
The only place, that's right, there were no inns, there were no hotels. The only place that kind of seems like that would be what are called caravanserais, which are large hotels and stop, way stations for caravans, for camel caravans. It's like a big truck stop. And it would not be the kind of place that any decent family would like to go. So we know that Mary and Joseph would not go to a caravanserai. There were no hotels in the area anywhere in the area because of the tradition of hospitality. If you were traveling and you needed a place to stay, you could literally walk up to any house and say, "I'm a traveler, can I stay here?" And the rules of Arab hospitality would be that they would take you in. So that wasn't an issue. The word inn that we see in the Gospels is actually a mistranslation of a word that means guest room, because every house had a guest room to make sure that they were always ready in case a traveler came by and they would have to show hospitality. So it means that there was no room in the particular houses that Mary and Joseph were looking at in which the guest room was available, because again, everybody's coming in for the census.
Right.
In those days, at night, people they would take their small groups of flocks of, goats, cows, and they would bring them into the house, not only for safekeeping, but also animals would provide body warmth. And so it was people lived very, very close to animals in those days.
Was that called central heating?
Absolutely. I mean, if you had a one-story house, you slept on the same room with the animals. If you had a two-story house, you would sleep upstairs, the animals would be downstairs. So that's most likely the situation. The guest rooms were full, so Mary and Joseph, in a two-story house, went downstairs and gave birth in the first floor among the animals.
So when you see a nativity scene, you see them like in a barn,
Yeah.
or what have you, with animals around, and quote, the manger.
Well, you know, it was St. Francis of Assisi who kind of developed the tradition of building nativity sets. And he's from Italy,
Right.
which has a lot of forests. And so where the place where animals stayed, they would think of a stable. And it would be like a European-looking, an Italian-looking stable. But we know now that Mary and Joseph were born in the Middle East. They were born in the Bethlehem area where there's caves, and the animals would be in the caves. So anytime if you see a nativity set that looks like a grotto, that's much more accurate than a barn or stable.
So basically, it was like a cave.
It almost for sure was a cave because, again, that Roman temple was built over this particular cave in Bethlehem, and that's why the Church of the Nativity now is built over that cave.
Now, the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem, have you said Mass there?
Yes, every year.
That's going to be a thrill.
It's a great thrill. It's actually a tremendous thrill. Actually, we say Mass in a chapel that's very, very close to the main grotto. And actually, it was the room that St. Jerome used in the 300s when he translated the Bible from Greek into Latin.
Now, when you say Mass there every year, and all your people that are on tour with you, they just must absolutely, they must say this is a wonderful experience because this is where the birth of Christ took place. You're saying Mass, and it's got to be one of the highlights of your tour.
It is because our trip is an archaeologically based tour. So we only go to places that have some archaeological verification. And we only say Mass on places that have the highest verification. So if we're saying Mass someplace, it's quite moving because people have a sense that the story that we're celebrating actually occurred on the spot. And Bethlehem has one of the strongest verifications.
Well, you know, Bethlehem today is going to be one of the world's most popular tourist destinations for many people, Christians, and every other religion, because there's an awful lot of religions, not Catholics, that believe in the birth of Christ.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Bethlehem, the cave, you know, we say that Jesus was born in this cave. It's a little difficult to say where in the cave the birth occurred. That pretty much can't be determined, although there is the archaeological remains of a manger. But where the actual spot is, you know, within this 20-foot diameter is pretty hard to say. But there is a spot that has traditionally been indicated as the spot where Jesus was born. It has kind of a protective covering over it with a hole that you can put your hand through and touch the bare rock.
Wow.
So people like to do that. Now you can only do it one person at a time. And so when you look in Bethlehem and you see thousands of tourists, pilgrims going to Bethlehem, you know that they all have to funnel through into single file line, and then one person at a time gets their moment at the shrine. So it's it's very compelling. A lot of anticipation builds up as you're in line. You have time to think and to reflect and to pray about what's about to happen. And so people find it very, very moving.
Also, it's an experience.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an experience. This was where the Christ child was born. And here on earth, right here. We're talking ground zero for the birth of Christ.
And, you know, it's compelling also because, to get to Bethlehem, we go through the Israeli-Palestinian West Bank checkpoint. So modern politics kind of impinges on us as we're about to go see something that remembers something 2,000 years ago. But it's a reminder that when Jesus came 2,000 years ago, he came to planet Earth, which is a dangerous place.
Right.
And yet nothing would stop him from being with the people that he loves. So
And that was his whole purpose of
that
coming,
was his whole purpose.
to be a human being.
To be a human person and to show us God's love despite our sinfulness, despite turning planet Earth into a dangerous place. Jesus would still nevertheless come here to show us the Father's love.
And that's kind of important because sometimes we don't think about that. We take it for granted. And the commercialization of Christmas sometimes is kind of tough, but that's part of life. And that exists, and there's nothing we can do about it. But I think Christmas is really about the birth of Christ.
Well, and also, I'm glad the fact that, if someone is buying items in a store, that means that store owner has a job, and a job means a family.
Exactly.
And so that's, the point of Christmas as well.
Exactly.
Is bringing joy and peace to families. So we're glad that if Christmas helps the economy, that's a wonderful Christmas present.
Now, your tour is coming up in June. And you have a website?
Just my name is one word, Dave Heney, DaveHeney.com. And at the top, you'll see, join me for a visit to the Holy Land.
And you've got your whole itinerary there?
And pictures of the hotels and travel tips and everything that you need to know.
And this will take place?
June 14,
Mid-June.
Mid-June. Yeah, middle of June. And it's about $4,000 per person, and that covers everything. Hotels, meals, tours, taxes, everything.
I'm looking forward to our day when we can go on tour with you.
Wonderful.
Looking forward to it. And I would like to thank you for coming in today and talking about Bethlehem then and now, especially with this holiday season, Christmas season upon us. And it is my pleasure to wish you a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you, and a Merry Christmas to you.
And thank you for listening. I hope you all have a great holiday season and a Merry Christmas. Stay well.